The Mishawaka Common Council for Monday, November 21st will please come to order. Good evening. Those of you who are in attendance physically this evening, if you would, we welcome you, but please take a moment to check your cell phones to make sure that you have placed them on silent or vibrate. For those of you who are participating remotely, good evening as well. We appreciate you participating. For those members of the public who are participating remotely, we ask that you place your microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting any comments that they may wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and after completing the comment, members of the public will once again be asked to place their microphone on mute, and we thank all of you for your cooperation this evening. With that, we will move into the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence in honor of former Mishawaka Mayor and Mishawaka City Councilman Bob Kovach, who passed away this past weekend. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we move further into the agenda, I want to thank Mayor Wood and our city IT department for the really well done remembrance of Bob Kovach that appears on the big board outside this chamber. So if you had to have a chance to see that, we would certainly invite you to do so. As is reflected on the board and as was reflected in the newspaper article, the reference to Bob Kovach as being only the mayor of Mishawaka and a former Mishawaka city councilman doesn't do him any justice. He was a man who held various elected and appointed positions at every level of government in the state of Indiana. In addition to having served as the mayor of Mishawaka and a city councilman, he was a former School City of Mishawaka board member, a former State Board of Education board member, a state senator, a county commissioner, an aide to 2 Indiana governors, and the former head of the Indiana Department of Commerce. So his role in government extended throughout the state. As we talked about a little bit when we did the dedication of this building, he also played a vital role in the fact that we're here in this location this evening. Some of us who have been around Mishawaka for a while can remember when this was a vacant lot. And if I remember correctly, this used to be the place where the city would dump snow when they plowed and they couldn't find any place else to dump it. And it was through his hard work and his vision that Liberty Mutual was invited to Mishawaka, which then set the stage for us to now move into this wonderful municipal space. He also was very proud of the role that he played with regard to Battelle Center and the transformation of a former school building into a community event center and some apartment space. So his impact on Mishawaka and our community will be realized on into the future. Certainly, we want to express our condolences to the Kovach family. May he rest in peace. And at this point in time, if there's anyone else who wishes to share some thoughts with regard to Bob Kovach, please do so.
Mr. President, council members, Wood Mayor, fondly recalling and remembering Mayor Kovach. I've known him ever since I was 12 years old. Got to know him on some summer night at Cedar Lake up in Marcellus, Michigan. I was with my grandfather, and we were up there to spend a weekend. He had rented the cottage. He was a St. Joseph County Councilman, my grandfather was, and we stayed in a cottage right next to Mayor Kovach. And so that night, my grandfather and Mayor Kovach got to talking. They'd known each other for a long time. And so they devised a late-night fishing trip, and they invited me to go on it. And I will tell you that that night still lives strong in my memory. I can't repeat a lot of what was said there that night, but it was loud. They taught me how to fish off the side of the boat. I did most of the fishing, they did most of the talking. But I will never forget that that's the night I had my very first beer. It was the most vile substance I ever thought I ever had, at least at the time. I've come to kind of change that attitude and feeling, but ever since then, I've known Mayor Bob. When I first got elected some 22-plus years ago to council, bunch of us rookies went down with Clerk Block, who had us go visit with him in the State House. So we didn't have to go far. We went to the basement room with all the smoke billowing out it, and we went in there and I got a little education about public service in Mishawaka, old school. And I remember some of the conversation then and some of the advice, but we've stayed in contact pretty much from then until now. Even as I became mayor, he always had an open door to my office. He knew that. He came in and visited, and we would just talk. Most of the things I just blow off. Some of the things I actually I took his advice on. But he did always have a lot to say. The thing I love about him most is you always knew where you stood with him. He was brutally honest with you, good or bad, and I think that is a trait that is sorely needed in politics today, and one that I learned very much from him. As you said, Mr. President, he wore a lot of different hats, served our community, our citizens in so many roles. I always preferred to call him by his highest and best title, that of mayor. I always wanted to ask him what he thought his highest and best title was. I never did, but I have a feeling that he would probably say teacher, because he was very much a teacher to not only me, but to many of you on the council. Clerk Block, I know, it left his impact on Mishawaka that is still felt today, as you mentioned, with this building. I credit him at a time when downtowns were dying for saving this downtown. When Uniroyal Ball Band was diminishing in its size, when shops were closing up and heading to greener pastures and malls on the north side or suburbia, downtowns were not, their future didn't look bright, and he took the opportunities and made the opportunities that that really I would think or would attribute to saving this downtown. And since I've served on boards with him, I've learned that while sitting on a board, always throw out motions, keep them on offense, never defense. He taught me that one, and many, many other things that I will never forget. So we wish, our prayers and thoughts are with his family. We have extended any courtesy from the city to his family during, the time for making arrangements. And I've ordered that all of our flags be lowered to half staff throughout this week. And so, but small things that we can do in remembrance of him. But I would say that my memory of him will live on as long as I'm around, and I will miss him. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. President. My thoughts right now go really to a little bit more of a personal. When Bob was, I knew Bob before he was elected mayor. I actually worked on his campaign. I actually did a commercial for him right here when this lot was empty, long before Liberty Mutual came. And I've always enjoyed his company, as brass as he could be. He was enjoyable. He had a great sense of humor and a great wit. But one thing that I can tell you that he impacted my life greatly, he hired my husband on the fire department, and that is how I met my husband. At that time, the city clerk swore firefighters and police officers in, and I was the chief deputy, and my boss, Jan Apfel, was set to swear him in. He came on the fire department he was sworn in with Dave Schwer, the two of them. Don will tell you that he has one more day seniority than Dave Schwer, and that's very important when it comes to picking vacations, so I need that point made. But so earlier that day, before he came up to the Board of Public Works and Safety meeting and was sworn in, Chief Goddard, whose wife Betty actually introduced me to Jan Opfel and how I got my job in the clerk's office. So this is all, this is set the course. The chief said to me, I've got a firefighter I want to introduce you to, and I was like, no way, firefighters, cops, off limits. He said, no, this guy's different. Well, as you can see, almost 40 years later, I guess he was different. But it pretty much set the course for my life, my husband and I's life, and our dedication to public service. And I thank Bob Kovach for that dedication, the public service that he had, that he helped, along with my parents, instill in me. He'll be greatly missed, but his impact on Mishawaka, he loved Mishawaka. He loved this city. The impact and the ongoing impact, Battelle Center, as you said, this Liberty Mutual building that we're so fortunate to have as our new city hall, and so many other things. TIF, we talked about earlier today, the impact that he had on the whole state of Indiana. So he will be missed, and God rest his soul, and my condolences go out to Barb and Christy and Katie and his granddaughter. And thank you all for remembering him.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Thank you. Then we'll proceed with the agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. DeMade?
Here.
Mr. Hazen?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Mr. Belovich?
Here.
Mr. Compton?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of November 7th, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections? Then hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a letter from the Board of Zoning Appeals regarding their recommendations from their November 8th, 2022 meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals was held on the above referenced date, at which time the following use variance was considered. Appeal number 22-44, an appeal submitted by the Diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend, Inc., requesting a use variance for 1328 West Dragoon Trail to allow for outpatient counseling services. The board, with a vote of 5-0, recommend approval. This is signed by Carrie Myers, Administrative Planner. We also have a letter from the City Plan Commission regarding their recommendations from their November 8th meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Plan Commission was held on the above referenced date, at which time the following proposed resolution was considered. Resolution number 2022-02, a resolution approving a resolution of the City of Mishawaka Redevelopment Commission approving amendments to the declaratory resolution and the economic development plan for the Consolidated Area Improvement Project, modifying the current Consolidated Tax Increment Financing District to create a separate project-related TIF district. The commission, with a vote of 8-0, approved the resolution. This is signed by Carrie Myers, Administrative Planner.
Thank you. Report of special committee. This evening we have none. Ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2022-40, an ordinance amending the municipal code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, that establishes various fees and parking regulations regarding city-owned electric vehicle charging stations.
Proposed ordinance 2022-40 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2022-41, an ordinance amending the municipal code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, commonly known as the Councilmanic Districts Ordinance, and hereby redefining the boundaries of the Councilmanic Districts of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana.
Proposed ordinance 2022-41 will be assigned to the Personnel Committee. Resolutions.
Resolution R 2022-35, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a petition of the Mishawaka Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 1328 West Dragoon Trail, Mishawaka, Indiana.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2022-35. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Dan Florin. My address is 16730 Orchard Ridge Court, Granger, Indiana. I'm the CEO of Catholic Charities for the Diocese of Fort Wayne, South Bend. We're an affiliate of the diocese. The diocese has a property that is on the campus of Marion High School. It has some vacant office space in that building. Our Catholic Charities offices are on Miami Street in South Bend. We're in need of space. We've been expanding our mental health counseling services, and the diocesan facility on the Marion High School campus has some extra office space that we would like to rent from the diocese. We provide affordable mental health counseling for our schools and for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Florin? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? If so, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone physically present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Thank you. Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksema?
Yes.
Proposed resolution passes 9-0. Resolution R 2022-36, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving an order of the City of Mishawaka Plan Commission approving a certain declaratory resolution for the Consolidated Area Improvement Project adopted by the City of Mishawaka Redevelopment Commission.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2022-36. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Mr. President, members of council, Ken Prince, the Director of Planning and Community Development for the city. At your last meeting, we had extensive discussion regarding the Mishawaka Fieldhouse project. The content of this resolution is really just to create a separate TIF area that would be used to capture the increment that would provide partial funding for the project. As we discussed at our last meeting where we discussed the project in great detail, we have asked our various representatives to come back this evening to answer any questions you might have on the project itself. So although you may not have any questions on the creation of a separate TIF area, we understand that you may have separate questions on the project that could either occur now or later in terms of the approval of the ordinance, so that's your discretion. But we do have representatives from Carter Associates here, from Baker Tilly, and our special legal counsel, Randy Rampola, I believe, is online, if you should have any questions. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the resolution project-wise relative to the city, whatever your preference would be.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Prince? Ken, if you could, and thank you for the work that you've done on this. I know this has been at a time where you were coordinating a move into a new city hall. This was another big project, so thank you for the work that you've done.
Of course.
For the record and for purposes of those who are participating remotely, could you summarize why it is that we're taking this step, which to my knowledge we've never done, to create a single site TIF district?
It's all about the financing of the project. So our overall TIF area expires in 2039. So if we kept it in the existing TIF area, it's currently in a TIF area, obviously. And so by creating a separate TIF area, we'll capture the increment for that 25-year period, which will go to pay off the bonds on the project. The 25 years is needed or else the project's not affordable.
Very succinct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? If so, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Compton.
Thank you, President Higginbotham. I have a question for maybe Mr. Card that I know he was going to, and I appreciate the information that was forwarded to us, the memorandums, but I know you were going to reach out to the local labor groups and wondered how that conversation went.
Mr. Compton, not to be technical, but let's let Mr. Card introduce himself for the record
Thank you.
first.
Hello, Andy Card. Mr. President, good to see you and the council again today. Andy Card from Fishers, Indiana.
Mr. Compton.
Thank you. Mr. Card, I was curious as to how, I've talked to a couple of the building trades folks, how it went, how you feel it went, and, you know, what was your take on conversations you've had with people?
My opinion is they went exceedingly well. We reached out to actually several groups, even beyond the ones that were represented here. So we have spoken to actually Local 150, which is also the operating engineers. We spoke to IBEW. I spoke to them personally myself, had a great conversation. The IKORCC. We also spoke with Reith Riley, which is a paving company that uses union representation. And then we had an extensive meeting with Miller Eads, who will be the lead kind of person on the electrical side for us, has reached out to Hartley and some other local representatives as well here too. So the conversations went great, and we not only did those go great, but we've expressed to Meyer Najum that it is my desire that everyone up here that has the capability of bidding and wants to bid be included in the bid process. That I've reiterated that local labor is of extreme importance to us for lots of reasons: quality, cost savings, but I also told them that I've spoke in front of this council, and don't embarrass me. We need to do the right thing. So I've been assured all those things are in motion and happening, and so once we get past our due diligence, the bid process will begin. And it seemed that everyone I spoke to or my staff spoke to was very, very excited about the project and very appreciative.
Very good. Follow-up, you mentioned Miller Eads. They're a pretty good-sized electrical mechanical contractor from Indianapolis. Will this be open to local contractors to bid on the electrical mechanical
Miller
side?
Eads will just serve as a conduit. So the way that it works is we'll actually use a local electrical contractor. And the way I understand it is when it's time to call out the job, of course, all the labor will come from the local shop here. So Miller Eads is just they're really as a consultant because they've so intimately in our design and understand how all the electrical gets put together. So they will just really be a consultant, but the work will be done actually with a local contractor here. They won't be bringing their people up. We'll be using the local label here through, I believe it's the IBEW.
Thank you. I think, as you know, I'm closely connected to the IBEW here, and I don't mean to play gotcha, but they told me you haven't had a conversation with, unless it wasn't the business manager, but I texted him today and asked him, and he said he called you called back, but you haven't had a chance to connect yet. Do you have a different take on that?
Well, I did speak with them, and I talked to him for about 40 minutes, and I'd have to go back in my email. I don't remember his name, but it was the business development person that I spoke to personally. And that happened I believe it was Thursday or Friday of last week. So I'm not sure who you're talking to, but I absolutely spoke to them myself.
I believe you. I did speak to the lead guy there. And
Well,
that's what
I-
he told me.
Again, if
So
you-
I'm not going to, I'm not going to go back. and
I'll
forth on
give
that.
it to you in
And there's
an
several
email.
people in that office, so it could be someone else.
Well, this seemed to be the person like in charge of business development. This wasn't someone at the local. This is the person that goes out and does their business development, which is who you want me talking to. And I'd have to get his name. Billy, do you remember? What is it? Michael Lita.
Michael Lead is the business manager, and he's the one that told me this. I can show you the text.
Then we need to get Michael on the phone, because I personally had a conversation with him, so.
All right.
I'm not sure where the confusion is.
Maybe his memory is escaping him, but I will question him again.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Please let me know, and if that's the case, I'd like to get on the phone and understand why he's telling you different.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Other questions for Mr. Card? Mr. Card, thank you again for coming to see us and your patience with us again as we do our due diligence. As Mr. Compton indicated, I appreciate not only the conversations that you've had with local labor, and I guess before I leave that topic, if you could, and I know that you're going to be busy with this development, and a lot of other things in your staff will be as well, but if you could keep Mr. Prince and ourselves as well apprised as to those conversations as they continue to take place and maybe come to fruition. Keep us in the loop, if you would, with regard to how that all plays out.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And I also appreciate, in response to the question that I posed last time, the documentation that you shared with us, MOUs and letters of intent with regard to the local entities. It's an impressive group of really solid, community organizations. So thank you for the follow-up on that. One other item that we talked about a little bit at the last meeting was the ongoing relationship that you're going to have with a different segment of the community, that being the school corporations, and in this instance particularly Penn Harris Madison and School City of Mishawaka. Have you had a chance in the relatively short period of time between our last meeting and tonight to further follow up on any of those conversations, or does that remain more of a work in progress?
It's a little bit of a work in progress, but Brandon Lafferman, my COO, will be handling that part, and he is setting up meetings over winter break. It just seems to be a better time for those meetings and to happen virtually. And in fact, Billy even put a note here for me in my notes that will be happening over winter break. And we have also continued our conversations with Bethel as well. So those conversations will be forthcoming, I think, as we get into the end of December and holiday. We'll keep Mr. Prince apprised of those conversations. And quite frankly, you, Mr. President, or anybody else would like to be included on those emails, we're happy to keep you apprised.
That would be great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anything else that you want to share with us tonight that as you jumped in your vehicle and left City Hall 2 Mondays ago that you thought that you wanted to share with us that you didn't have a chance to articulate?
No, sir. I think that we pretty much covered all. I will tell you, though, that I'm glad to hear that you and the council are impressed with the list of partners. I will tell you that that list will even become more formidable and more impressive once we perfect and we're finally done. The Nike, the Under Armour, the Adidas, some of those things will be very quickly forthcoming after the final process is finished.
Fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you all again.
Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Mr. Compton?
I think comment is more in order. As I've said before on this, I've thought a lot about it, and I just want to verbally express for the record out loud what I think we're doing here, and I think we're putting a lot of tax dollars and hotel motel, ready grant, into this project. Millions. More than I ever remember doing for any private entity in the past. And besides that, we're stringing this out until 2046 for a new field house. And I've asked, why this? And responses I got were, it will spur other development in that area. And I understand that. I've thought about history that I wasn't involved in, expressed some of it to you today, Mr. President, that I wasn't here when Edison Lakes was planned, and the council that had to wrangle over that, and what were they going to get for that? And maybe more closely related would be the mall, way back when it was just a piece of property on the other side of the toll road. And the same response, I'm sure, was given, is other development, and look what's done. But for me, I'm not sure this is either one of those types of projects. I don't know. I like the idea. I think if it was a simple tax abatement or this is much more than that, in my opinion. And I continue to ask myself, what is our gain from this? And I don't see the risk for the reward for the risk, for me personally. I just don't think I can support this. This has nothing to do with Cardin Associates. This has it's just the whole mix of how we're financing this and what we're being asked to do as a city. So I just wanted to go on the record and kind of rant a little bit. Rant's not the right word, but comment on these things and state my piece. And then the chips will fall where they fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Other questions or comments from the council? Then, Mr. Compton, as somebody who has been known to rant from time to time, that was not a rant. Your comments were very well taken. And as I've said before, as we've discussed this topic, both in this setting and in private conversations, I agree with much of what you said. And I spent quite a bit of time actually following up myself and thinking about what you said as you referenced about the issues that were faced by a council many years ago when University Park Mall was a concept. That was before the council. And there have been opportunities that all of us have had to cast a vote when there was some element of risk involved. This project has been structured from the city standpoint to minimize the risk. We've done a great deal, virtually everything that can be done to minimize the risk. But I don't think any of us can say with a straight face that there's no risk. There's always risk in life. But this has been structured in such a way that it has approval by the state and a commitment to, with that hotel motel tax money, to help support it. The fact that the city contribution is going to be structured within the TIF district rather than through the general fund as the initial support for the project, in my mind, provides some additional security. And while I acknowledge that level of risk that we're talking about, at this point in time, I'm compelled by the vision for what this could do in an area of the city where we have made a substantial investment in infrastructure and where we stand to grow. If you look at our map, that's one of the prime areas where we're going to be able to develop, and not just this site will be developed, but hopefully other sites will be developed. And to me, that's an investment that's worthy of some serious consideration. And in light of what's in front of us this evening, as much as I agree with the vast majority of what you say, I'm willing to bet on the vision. I'm willing to bet on the due diligence that we as a council have done, as well as the more in-depth work that our administration has done to take a look at this and to bring a proposal to us that's in the best interest of Mishawaka. So some continuing oversight will be necessary, and I've heard now in 3 meetings, 2 in front of the council and 1 with the redevelopment commission, Mr. Card's commitment to continue to communicate with us and to keep us in the loop. The agreements themselves talk about that, but I'm more interested in those type of commitments and what the relationship's going to be moving forward. Because this is a venture that has risk. So it'll be necessary for us, on behalf of the community, to have ongoing communication and to know that the leap of faith that we're going to take is warranted. So I wish Mr. Card and his associates well as we move forward with this venture. I'm very optimistic that this is going to be just what we think it's going to be, which is a catalyst to really high-quality development in the northeastern part of Mishawaka. But we'll need to keep an eye on it, and we'll need to make sure that the representations that have been made to us across the board are followed through on. So I will be supporting not only this resolution, but I anticipate supporting the ordinance with respect to the issuance of the bonds as well. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
No.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The resolution passes 8-1.
Ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2022-39, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, authorizing the City of Mishawaka, Indiana to issue one or more series of its taxable economic development lease rental revenue bonds, and approving and authorizing other actions in respect thereto.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2022-39, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion, it should be presented to the council as a whole. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, then Madam Clerk, would you poll the council on the committee report?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The committee report passes 9-0.
Thank you. With that, we will now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2022-39. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Mr. President, members of the council, Ken Prince, Director of Planning and Community Development for the city. Just to elaborate, I know some of the resolution discussion touched on financing and why we're doing the project. I want to touch on that just for a brief second. So the financing of the project is unique, and the reason why these bonds are being issued as municipal bonds is because of the interest rate. So the interest rate is lower and enables us essentially to do the project. If we did not back these, they would be unaffordable, and the project would not move forward, which is why this is being done.
He just walked in.
The police showed up on the outside. You can't see that, so I'm glad that he runs when the police show up. For those online, the police asked the mayor to leave the building, so he's to talk to. So that's a good sign. So in summary, the municipal bond is needed, so we're essentially co-signing the loan here. So that if this project were to default, we would have to assume the loan payments on the building. That is the real risk that we're talking about here. In terms of direct financial contributions, the only thing the city is donating to the project, if you will, is the land where it is being constructed. We do not have any other financing that is going directly into the project other than the tax increment that's being collected that we talked about previously. That is part of the developer's contribution, essentially an operating expense from the facility, which is combined from both operating and then the TIF contribution. The other financing components that I think are huge are what you referenced, Mr. President, in terms of the hotel motel tax of $960,000 a year, and then the READY grant from the RDA, which is $5.2 million going into the facility. So if we were undertaking this by ourselves without any support, I think that would raise additional questions. But in this case, we have buy-in by both local business from hotel motel, and then also from the state in the form of READY funds. And then, of course, the RDA, who is awarding those READY funds also in terms of buying into the project. The only other commitment that we make routinely for economic development projects is the construction of Veterans Parkway, which eventually will connect to Cleveland Road, but we are extending as part of this project. That extension cost, building a roundabout and extending it to the north end of the property, is approximately $5 million. That includes the sewer lines, the water lines, the sidewalks, the landscaping, everything that goes into that is part of that cost for the extension. Regarding the bond and the repayment, when we talk about the risk, again, Mr. President, you identified the tax increment financing district, which it provides the backing for the first roughly 15 years of the project, which again are, as you know, our TIF expires in 2039, our current consolidated TIF, which was the need to create this separate TIF district. And as we discussed briefly at the last meeting, another step we will likely take in the future is creating another TIF district around the Penn Farm itself, so we can extend the increment that's collected off of that for local infrastructure projects in that area, but also should this project default in the future, that we have yet another backup source to pay off the debt associated with it should it fail. We don't walk into things thinking that they're going to fail, but we're very cognizant of tax dollars and protecting them as we move forward. So again, regarding the project itself, any of the finance components, we do have Baker Tilly in attendance. We have Randy Rampol online, and obviously we have the developer present should you have any questions. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Prince? Mr. Compton?
Thank you, Mr. President. More of a comment after my comments last time, a moment ago, Mr. Prince. I appreciate everything you've done here and all the information and giving us everything we've asked for. It comes down to me to risk averseness and putting all of so much of our eggs into this basket, into the future. And so I'm not, that's the issue. I hope the project's successful. I wish Mr. Card well. I'll do anything I can to help him make this project successful. I'm just not sure that we should be doing that for this type of project. It's my opinion and my risk averseness on this, so that's kind of where I stand. I just want to just again state that publicly.
And if I may, Mr. Compton, the one way to look at it as well is it's not just regarding this is going to incentivize development in the area. One of the things unique about Mishawaka relative to this type of project is we already have hotels, we already have restaurants, and this project will very specifically support the businesses that already exist in and around Mishawaka because of the draw that it has. Tens of thousands of people will be coming from outside this community, bringing outside dollars into this community if this project is successful. So it's not just about that development that happens around it. It's the outside money that comes in that supports not only our local businesses, but then also will encourage that development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Thank you. Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade,
Yes.
Mr. Hazen,
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti,
Yes.
Mr. Benicki,
Yes.
Mr. Emmons,
Yes.
Mr. Belovich,
Yes.
Mr. Compton,
No.
Mrs. Volker,
Yes.
Mr. Higginbotham.
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 8-1.
At this time, we'll move into privilege of the floor, and members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Thank you. With that, we'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business, is there any new business to come before the council? Hearing none, then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Yay. Good job.